Nero Wolfe and the Drowned Evidence, a classic Nero Wolfe noir mystery full detective story. Chapter 1, A Body That Shouldn't Float. If you want to learn the true value of routine, watch a man who worships it the way Nero Wolfe does, then try to interrupt him. It was a damp, gray New York morning, the kind that made the brownstone's front steps feel like they'd been sweating all night. The street outside smelled of wet stone, taxi exhaust, and the sad resignation of a city that had already seen too much and wasn't impressed by anything before noon. Inside, though, we had our own climate, warm, disciplined, and faintly perfumed with Wolfe's orchids drifting down the staircase like a polite warning. I was at my desk in the office, trying to convince myself that sorting correspondence was an occupation and not a slow death, when the doorbell rang. I didn't jump. Wolfe would have disapproved of jumping. But I did look up with hope, because the bell meant one of three things: money, trouble, or Inspector Kramer. The third is the least profitable and the most dependable. I opened the door and there he was, in his dark overcoat, hat brim still shining with rain, face set in that square-jawed expression that said he was in no mood to be teased. Which, of course, made him irresistible. "Morning, Inspector," I said. "Come in and dry out. We can hang you on a hook with the umbrellas." He brushed past me without even the courtesy of a scowl. "Where is he?" "In the chair," I said. "Where else would he be?" Kramer's eyes did a quick sweep of the office, desk, chairs, fireplace, the familiar calm. Then he glanced up at the staircase like he expected Wolfe to roll down it in a barrel. "He know I'm coming?" "No," I said. "But if you shout loud enough, you'll interrupt his beer and I'll have to lie about how it happened." Kramer grunted. He had a thick folder tucked under his arm, swollen like a bad secret. That interested me. Kramer didn't bring paper unless it was either too official to ignore or too ugly to carry in his head. I let him in and shut the door. Fritz's aroma, something magnificent involving butter and patience, hovered in the hall, and the orchid scent floated down from upstairs like an accusation. Wolfe was in the big chair behind his desk, massive and immaculate, yellow silk pajamas replaced by a tailored suit because it was still early and the world insisted on being difficult. His hands rested on the armrests, not steepled yet. He saved that posture for judgment. His face looked like a Roman emperor who'd been forced to discuss plumbing. He didn't look up when Kramer entered. Wolfe doesn't acknowledge interruptions, he permits them. "Good morning, Inspector," Wolfe said finally, as though Kramer had wandered in by mistake to admire the rug. "If you have come to discuss crime, I am occupied. If you have come to insult me, I assure you the time is also inconvenient." Kramer planted himself in the red leather chair opposite. "The time is always inconvenient for you." Wolfe's eyes lifted, two dark, steady stones. "Naturally. I took my own chair, because my part in the routine is to sit where I can watch both of them and keep the furniture from flying." Kramer tossed the folder onto my desk with a thud. The sound had the weight of the Hudson River. "We pulled a body out this morning," he said. Wolfe did not react. "I did, because I'm a human being and also because body is usually the start of a story that ends with me missing lunch." Kramer continued. "Male. Mid-40s. Dressed like he owned the city. Found near the West Side Piers. No identification." "And you have come," Wolfe said, "to inform me of your daily recreation." Kramer's mouth tightened. "He's not my recreation." "That is fortunate," Wolfe said dryly. "One should not become sentimental about a corpse." I leaned forward. "What's the hook, Inspector? You don't bring a folder to show Wolfe a dead man unless the dead man is holding a sign that says consult genius here." Kramer's eyes flicked to me. There was something in his pocket. "His lungs?" I offered. "An envelope fragment," Kramer snapped. "Soggy. Half torn. And it's not just paper, there's a corner of a label on it. Like it was meant to carry something specific." That got Wolfe's attention. Not the drowning, not the corpse, paper. He shifted slightly in the chair, a movement so small it would have passed for a dream if you didn't live with him. Explain. Kramer opened the folder and slid out a photograph. He held it up like a warrant. The picture was black and white, wet and unpleasant, a man's face, eyes half open, hair plastered down, mouth slack as if he'd started a sentence and forgot the rest. The skin had that bloated, pale look water gives the dead, like the river had tried to erase him and got impatient. I've seen enough bodies to keep my breakfast down, but this one had something extra. He looked surprised. Not the startled kind, but the offended kind, as if dying had violated a contract. Kramer laid the photograph on Wolfe's desk and then set a little plastic evidence sleeve beside it. Inside was the envelope piece, brown paper, water-stained, with a corner torn away. In the upper edge, the faint imprint of writing showed through, blurred but deliberate. Wolfe stared at it. His eyes narrowed, not in emotion, but in appraisal, like a jeweler examining a flawed diamond. "This," Wolfe said, "is why you are here." "Yes," Kramer said. "Because I don't like the way this one sits." I smiled. "You mean you don't like the way he floats?" Kramer glared at me. "The me says accidental. Slipped, fell, drowned. No bruises worth mentioning. No gunshot. No knife. But," he tapped the plastic sleeve. "This is odd. His pockets were cleaned out. No wallet, no keys, no cigarette case, nothing. Except that." Wolfe's lips tightened. "A man dressed like that does not go to the river without his wallet. Unless he intends to. Or unless someone intended he shouldn't have it," I said. Kramer nodded once, grudgingly. "Exactly." Wolfe leaned back. "If you already know the explanation, why do you burden me?" "Because," Kramer said, voice rough, "I don't know who he is. And because I don't believe in accidents that come with missing evidence." That last word, evidence, hung in the air with the orchid scent. In our line of work, evidence doesn't disappear by accident. It disappears by design. Wolfe's eyes went to me. "Archie." "Yes, sir." "You will go." Kramer blinked. "Go where?" Wolfe's mouth moved as if he were pronouncing a sentence in court. "To the river. To the police. To wherever this corpse was extracted from the water. You will see, observe, and return with facts. Inspector Kramer will no doubt provide access." Kramer shifted, annoyed. "I didn't come here to hire your errand boy." Wolfe's gaze didn't waver. "You did not come here for conversation. You came here because you are uncertain." Kramer stared at him for a moment, then exhaled through his nose. "All right. Archie can come down. But I'm not promising anything." Wolfe's eyes dropped back to the envelope fragment. "Promise nothing. Provide everything." I stood up, grabbed my coat and hat, and offered Kramer my best innocent grin. "Let's go admire your river, Inspector. Maybe it'll confess." Kramer grunted again, but this time it wasn't entirely hostile. As we headed for the door, Wolfe called after me without looking up. "Archie." I paused. "Yes." "Do not be drowned." "I'll try," I said. "But if the Hudson wants to make a contribution, I won't argue." Down the steps and out into the wet street, the city slapped me with cold air and the smell of exhaust. A taxi splashed past, throwing a wave of dirty water onto the curb. Kramer's unmarked car waited like a bored bulldog. "You always talk like that?" Kramer asked as we climbed in. "Only when I'm awake," I said. "So, who found him?" "River Patrol," Kramer said, starting the engine. "A tugboat reported something snagged near the pilings. They hauled him up like an old coat." The car rolled through the wet streets, past brownstones and diners just waking up, past delivery trucks and men in hats carrying their mornings like burdens. The city was ordinary, which made the idea of a body in the river feel extra wrong. New York doesn't drown people accidentally, it murders them with traffic and rent. At the West Side piers, the air turned sharper. The river was a flat, gray sheet, moving slow and heavy, like it had secrets to keep. Police uniforms stood in clusters. A few longshoremen watched from a distance, smoking and pretending not to care. Kramer flashed his badge and dragged me into the crowd. A cop nodded. A sergeant muttered something. Someone pointed. And then I saw where the body had come out. There was a section of pilings near a low platform, dark wood, wet rope, the kind of place you wouldn't go unless you had business or bad luck. A chalk mark on the boards. A wet smear where something heavy had been dragged. I looked at the water and felt a small itch in my brain, the one that always comes when a story doesn't line up. The Hudson was moving, but not much. Currents here could pull things under, push them out, slide them along. But the pilings were close to shore. Too close for a man in expensive shoes to just slip without someone noticing, unless he was already in trouble. A uniformed officer came over. "You the private guy?" "Depends," I said. "Do you charge extra for that title?" He didn't smile. "Officer Dugan. I was here when they pulled him." "What did you see?" I asked. He shrugged. "Body in the water. Stuck. We pulled him out." "Anyone see him go in?" I asked. Dugan hesitated. "No." Kramer stepped in. "Any witnesses at all?" "A dockworker said he heard shouting around 3, Dugan said. "Couldn't see much, fog was thick." "Shouting," I repeated. "On the pier?" "Sounded like it," Dugan said. I glanced at Kramer. Accidental drownings don't usually come with shouting. They come with silence and stupidity. I walked closer to the edge and looked down at the waterline. There were bits of debris, wood chips, soggy paper, a cigarette butt, and something else, a torn strip of brown paper stuck between 2 nails on the platform, like the river had tried to deliver a message and got snagged. I pointed. "That yours?" Dugan leaned in. "We didn't see that." Kramer looked irritated. "Bag it." A tech moved in with tweezers. I stared at the strip. It looked like the same paper as the envelope fragment, only this one had a faint line of ink, blurred by water. Not enough to read, but enough to tell it had been written carefully. I felt that itch grow. Because if someone had torn up an envelope and thrown it into the river, pieces wouldn't politely wait at the exact spot the body came out, unless they were introduced there. Unless the river hadn't carried them far at all. Unless the story of where the body entered the water was a lie. I didn't say it to Kramer. Not yet. I wanted to see what else the river had to offer before I fed him a theory. Kramer watched me. "You got something?" "Just a feeling," I said. "And I hate those. Wolfe loves them, because he gets to turn them into facts." Kramer snorted. "Bring him facts, then." "Oh, I will," I said, looking at the flat gray water. "Because this body, this one, didn't just float up. He was delivered." Behind us, the city kept moving, indifferent and noisy, while the river pretended it had nothing to say. But I've learned something about New York: if it stays quiet, it's because someone paid it to. Chapter 2, The Client Who Arrives Too Dry. By the time I got back to the brownstone, New York had decided to rain again, not the dramatic, cinematic kind, just enough to make your coat smell like wet ambition. I shook it off in the hall, hung my hat, and took a moment to breathe in the reassuring blend of beeswax polish, old books, and orchids. If heaven has a waiting room, Wolfe has been trying to recreate it for years. I hadn't even reached the office door when Fritz intercepted me with the solemnity of a priest. "Mr. Archie," he said, lowering his voice, "there is a lady." "That's nice," I said. "Is she armed?" "She is nervous," Fritz replied. "And very dry." That stopped me. "Dry," I repeated. "Yes. Considering the weather, it is notable. I grinned. Fritz notices things the way a surgeon notices a tremor. Thanks. Keep her from fainting. I'll alert the management. Inside the office, Wolfe was exactly where I'd left him, sunk into the red leather chair like a monument to inertia, a book open on his lap, unread. His eyes were on the envelope fragment, which lay on the desk under a paperweight like a moth pinned for study. You went to the river, Wolfe said without looking up. I got my shoes wet, I said. You would have hated it. Did the river confess, he asked. Not yet. It's the strong, silent type. Wolfe's lips moved a fraction. That was as close as he came to amusement before noon. You will report after I have heard from our visitor. I blinked. You already know. I know Fritz, Wolfe said. He would not interrupt my reading unless the interruption was superior to it. Bring her in. I opened the door and gestured. She entered cautiously, like someone stepping into a courtroom where she wasn't sure which side she was on. She was in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, elegant without being flashy, the kind of woman who spent money carefully and expected it to work for her. Her coat was tailored, dark wool, spotless. Her shoes were black, polished, and, Fritz was right, bone dry. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in Wolfe, the desk, the chairs, me. They lingered on the envelope fragment, then darted away. That was subtle enough that only someone paid to watch would notice. Mr. Wolfe, she said, voice controlled, a little too controlled. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Wolfe inclined his head by a degree. You have interrupted my routine. Your gratitude is premature. I pulled out a chair for her. Have a seat before he frightens you into honesty. She sat. Her posture was perfect. So was her breathing, too even for a woman who claimed to be distressed. Wolfe studied her like a rare insect. Your name? Margaret Hale, she said. Was, business partners with the man found in the Hudson this morning. That was fast. Most clients take at least 5 minutes to dance around the body. I see, Wolfe said. You are aware of the police conclusion? Yes, she said quickly. And it's wrong. I leaned back. You sound confident for someone whose partner took an unscheduled swim. Her gaze snapped to me. He didn't drown. He was murdered. Wolfe steepled his fingers at last, the official signal that a case was entering its proper phase. You are convinced? Yes. Why? She hesitated. Just a flicker. Because he was carrying evidence. There it was, the word again, dropped like bait. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Evidence of what? She shook her head. I don't know exactly. But I knew it was dangerous. He told me it would ruin people. Plural, Wolfe noted. An ambitious envelope. I watched her hands. They rested calmly in her lap, fingers lightly interlaced. No tremor. No fidgeting. If she was lying, she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. You came here, Wolfe continued, instead of to the police. Why? Because the police think it was an accident, she said. And because I was told you understand evidence. I smiled. That's his hobby. Mine is annoying witnesses. She ignored me. I believe someone killed him to retrieve what he was carrying. Wolfe nodded once. A reasonable belief. However, beliefs require substantiation. What was the nature of your partnership? We were consultants, she said. Shipping logistics. Contracts. Risk assessment. That aligned neatly with the scraps Kramer had mentioned. Too neatly. And your partner's name? Wolfe asked. Daniel Cross. I felt a small click in my head. I'd heard the name at the docks, not loudly, but enough. Men who work near water know the names of men who make money from it. Wolfe glanced at the envelope fragment. This was found in his pocket. Her eyes flicked to it again, faster this time. Then it survived. Part of it, Wolfe said. You seem relieved. She straightened. Relieved that there is proof he didn't drown by accident. That is not what you are relieved about, Wolfe said mildly. Silence settled, thick as the orchid scent drifting down from upstairs. Somewhere in the house, Fritz was conducting a private symphony with a saucepan. I decided to stir the pot. Miss Hale, you said he told you the evidence would ruin people. Did he tell you who? No. When did you last see him? Last night, she said. We met briefly. He was agitated. Where? I asked. In my office, she said. On Madison. And after that? He left. Alone? Yes. I leaned forward. You didn't walk him out? No. You didn't drive him? No. You didn't follow him? Her eyes hardened. No. Wolfe raised a finger, not at me, but at the timeline forming invisibly in his mind. You claim to have been concerned for his safety. Yes. Yet you did nothing, Wolfe said, to ensure it. Her mouth tightened. I couldn't force him. No, Wolfe agreed. But you could have accompanied him. She shifted, just slightly. Her foot moved under the chair. I clocked it. And yet, Wolfe went on, you arrived here today entirely dry. She looked startled. I beg your pardon. It is raining, Wolfe said. Has been since morning. You claim distress. One might expect haste. Yet your coat, your shoes, immaculate. I smiled sweetly. You look like you teleported. Color crept into her cheeks. I took a taxi. From where? Wolfe asked. From my apartment. On the east side, Wolfe said, not guessing. She stared at him. Yes. Wolfe nodded. Which suggests you were not at the river this morning. No, she said quickly. I didn't go there. Yet you speak with certainty about the nature of his death, Wolfe said. And about what he was carrying. Her control cracked, just a hairline fracture. Because I knew what he was involved in. And you did not warn the police, Wolfe said, until now. I'm warning you, she snapped. Isn't that enough? Wolfe leaned back, massive and immovable. It may suffice. But you have not told us everything. She stood abruptly. I'm not a suspect. I stood too, because when clients start standing, furniture tends to suffer. Nobody said you were. Not yet. She looked from me to Wolfe, breathing faster now. The calm had slipped. That was interesting. I want you to find who killed him, she said. And I want the evidence recovered. Wolfe's eyes were cold and assessing. And if the evidence implicates you? Her chin lifted. Then I will accept that consequence. It sounded noble. It didn't sound true. Wolfe nodded. Very well. I will consider your request. She hesitated. That's all. For now, Wolfe said. Archie will escort you out. As I opened the door for her, she paused. Please, she said softly. Be careful. Whoever did this won't hesitate again. After she left, the office felt quieter, heavier. I turned to Wolfe. Thoughts? Wolfe regarded the envelope fragment. She knows more than she admits. That's most people, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. But she knows specifically more. I grinned. And she arrived too dry. Wolfe closed his book at last. Archie. Yes, sir. You will investigate Margaret Hale. Gladly, I said. Anything else? Yes, Wolfe said, settling deeper into the chair. Discover what evidence does not drown. Outside, a taxi horn blared. Somewhere downtown, the river kept its secrets. For now. Chapter 3, The River Lies. If there's one thing New York does well, it's lying with confidence. The city lies about rent, about love, about how long it takes to get anywhere, and rivers lie best of all. They look honest. They aren't. By 10 o'clock that night, I was back out by the Hudson, collar up, hat brim doing its best against a wind that felt personal. The river had changed its tone since morning. By day it was gray and bored, by night it turned black and theatrical, sliding past the piers like it was late for something and didn't want to be questioned. I stood near the pilings where Daniel Cross had been hauled out, staring at the water and thinking about envelopes that don't finish drowning. A dockworker was leaning against a crate nearby, smoking with the patience of a man who has nowhere else to be and no reason to hurry. He looked like he'd been carved out of rope and bad weather. I walked over. Evening. He eyed me. Depends who's asking. Guy who doesn't like unanswered questions, I said. Name's Archie. Name's Lou, he said. I work. That so? I said. Ever see a man go into that river? Lou exhaled smoke. Lots of men go into the river. Some come out. Some don't. That one, I said, nodding toward the pilings. He squinted. The fancy one? That's him. Lou hesitated. Didn't see him go in. Did you see him before he went in? I asked. Lou flicked ash. Maybe. That was dockworker talk for yes, but it'll cost you. I reached into my pocket and showed him something green and persuasive. Talk, I said. He pocketed it without ceremony. He was arguing. On the pier. With another guy. What kind of guy? I asked. Lou shrugged. Clean. Coat like money. Shoes like he didn't belong here. Time. After midnight. Fog was thick. Voices raised. Yeah. The fancy one sounded scared. That lined up nicely with shouting at 3 and not at all with accidental slipping. Did you see him fall? I asked. No, Lou said. I heard a thud. Like something heavy hitting wood. I looked back at the platform. Wet planks. Nails. A smear that could have been a body dragged or a truth pushed. Then what? I asked. Lou shrugged again. I went back to work. Of course he did. New York doesn't pay overtime for curiosity. I thanked him and headed back toward the street, my shoes picking up enough dampness to make Margaret Hale's dryness feel even louder. A taxi crawled past like it was considering me. I waved it down. East 35th, I told the driver. And don't drown me. He looked offended. I drive. Inside the cab, with the city sliding by in streaks of yellow and black, I started connecting dots. Cross argued on land. Something heavy hit wood. No splash witnessed. Envelope fragments near the platform. River currents that should have taken paper away, not left it politely behind. The river wasn't lying by itself. Someone had coached it. Back at the brownstone, the house was settling into its nighttime personality. Lights low. The faint hum of the city filtered through walls thick enough to resist most realities. The orchid scent was stronger at night, sweet, disciplined, smug. Wolfe was in the office, as expected, a glass of beer at his elbow, untouched. He was reading something German and disapproving of it. You smell like the river, he said without looking up. I feel like it too, I said, dropping into my chair. Which means it's lying. Everything lies, Wolfe said. Only incompetence tells the truth accidentally. I reported. Dockworker. Argument. Thud. No splash. Wolfe listened without interruption, eyes half-lidded, fingers resting on the armrests. When I finished, he took a sip of beer and grimaced faintly, like it had betrayed him. The body did not enter the water where it was found, he said. Exactly, I said. The river would have carried it south. Same with the paper. Wolfe nodded. A post-mortem relocation. Fancy, I said. So he was killed elsewhere. Almost certainly indoors, Wolfe said. Drowning signs can be simulated after death if one is careless or confident. Which one are we dealing with? I asked. Wolfe's eyes opened fully. Both. The phone rang, sharp and rude. I answered. Goodwin. Archie, Kramer's voice said. ME's report just came in. I straightened. And? Water in the lungs, sure. But there's something else. Bruising on the upper back. Not enough to scream murder, but enough to whisper. I glanced at Wolfe. He raised an eyebrow. Like a shove? I asked. Like a controlled one, Kramer said. And his time of death? Earlier than we thought. How much earlier? Before midnight. I hung up and looked at Wolfe. Killed earlier. Dumped later. Yes, Wolfe said. The river was not the crime scene. It was the alibi. The phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was a different voice, nervous, quick. Mr. Goodwin. This is Sam Loader. Photolab on 9th. I felt a click. You called us? Yes. I remembered something. About the man in the river. Go on, I said. He brought negatives. Late job. Paid cash. Wolfe leaned forward now. I put the receiver on speaker. Negatives of what? I asked. A meeting, Loader said. 3 men. One looked like Cross. The others, important. Suits. Serious. Did you develop them? Wolfe asked. Yes. He picked them up. He was nervous. Kept asking if copies were made. Were they? Wolfe asked calmly. There was a pause. 1 set. For insurance. I closed my eyes and smiled. That's a beautiful word. Where are they now? Wolfe asked. At the shop. In the safe. Do not move them, Wolfe said. We will come to you. I hung up. So that's what the envelope was holding. Wolfe nodded. Photographic negatives are resistant to water but vulnerable to ignorance. Someone drowned the container, not the contents. Or thought they did, I said. Wolfe leaned back, satisfied. Which suggests the killer did not know all the facts. I stood. I'll get the negatives. No, Wolfe said sharply. I froze. Sir. You will not, Wolfe said. You will wait. That's a new one, I said. Since when do you keep me away from evidence? Since the evidence has provoked an escalation, Wolfe said. Archie, someone attempted to erase proof once. They may attempt again. So I bring a coat, I said. Wolfe's eyes were hard. You bring patience. That was worse. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find a man in a city coat, hat low, eyes everywhere. He smiled without warmth. Evening, he said. I'm looking for Mr. Wolfe. You found his address, I said. That's the hard part. I represent interests concerned about a misunderstanding, he said. About the man who drowned. Wolfe's voice floated from the office. There was no misunderstanding. Only miscalculation. The man stepped inside. He glanced at the orchids, the desk, the chair. His smile tightened. We'd like this matter to go away, he said. Matters do not go away, Wolfe replied. They conclude. The man looked at me. You're Archie Goodwin. That's what it says on the checks, I said. He nodded. Be careful near water. I smiled back. I prefer bourbon. He left. I shut the door and turned to Wolfe. Threat? Advice, Wolfe said. From someone who fears what floats. I looked at the envelope fragment, at the river-smudged truth refusing to sink. Next move? I asked. Wolfe closed his eyes, already 10 steps ahead. We drain the river, he said. Carefully. Outside, a taxi horn wailed. Somewhere downtown, negatives waited in a safe, and someone else waited to make sure they didn't. The river had lied. Now it was time to make it talk. Chapter 4, The Evidence That Sank Too Well. If there's one thing Nero Wolfe hates more than being rushed, it's being proven right slowly. By the time Chapter 4 rolled around, he had been proven right enough to be irritated and not enough to be satisfied, a dangerous condition for everyone within shouting distance. The photographic negatives arrived at the brownstone in a plain envelope, carried by me with the care usually reserved for unstable chemicals and fragile egos. I'd picked them up from Sam Loder's photo lab myself, after Wolfe had spent 10 solid minutes explaining, at conversational volume, why sending them by messenger would constitute criminal stupidity. Loder had been pale and talkative, a combination that usually means the truth is nearby and trying to escape. He handed over the envelope like it might bite him. Those pictures, he said, licking his lips, they're trouble. So is breathing, I told him. You get used to it. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe examined the envelope before allowing me to open it, as if the paper itself might offer a confession. The office was warm, lamplight pooling on the desk, orchids glowing upstairs like they were enjoying the show. Fritz's dinner was in progress somewhere in the house, judging by the smell of butter and discipline. Place them on the blotter, Wolfe said. I did. Inside were 3 negatives, each slipped into a protective sleeve. Even without developing them, you could see shapes, men, table, shadows. The kind of shapes that don't show up at charity luncheons. Wolfe adjusted his spectacles and leaned forward, eyes sharp now, the way they get when the world finally aligns with his expectations. As I surmised, he said. Not documents. Images. Still proof, I said. And easier to drown. Easier to misunderstand, Wolfe corrected. Paper dissolves. Film survives, provided the ignorant attempt its destruction. I leaned back. So someone dumped the envelope thinking water would erase it. Yes, Wolfe said. And failed. I picked up the torn envelope fragment from the desk and held it next to the intact one from Loder. Same paper. Same glue residue. Same faint label impression. Daniel Cross was carrying these, I said. Or some of them. Indeed, Wolfe replied. And he was murdered for that burden. The phone rang, as if summoned by the word murder. I answered. Goodwin. Archie, Kramer said. We ran Cross's name harder. And? He had meetings with a shipping magnate named Victor Harlan. And a city councilman, Elliot Brand. I looked at Wolfe. His eyebrow rose a fraction. That was applause. Convenient, I said. 2 men who'd hate to be photographed in the wrong company. There's more, Kramer said. Harlan's people say Cross was extorting him. Or vice versa, I said. That's your department, Kramer grunted. Mine is keeping bodies from floating. I hung up and turned to Wolfe. We've got ourselves a trio. Cross, Harlan, Brand. Wolfe nodded. And a 4th, Margaret Hale. Always the bridesmaid, I said. Wolfe didn't smile. She knew too much too early. We examined the negatives under a small viewer Wolfe produced from a drawer. He has a drawer for everything except patience. The images resolved into clarity: 3 men around a table, one unmistakably Daniel Cross. Another with Harlan's heavy features and expensive contempt. The third, Brand, leaner, eyes sharp, hands folded like he was posing for a campaign brochure. The table was cluttered with papers. One document lay open, its header visible even in reverse. Shipping contract, I said. Or something pretending to be one. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Forgery, he said. Or fraud. Either way, I said, it's not something you want immortalized on film. Quite, Wolfe said. Which explains the urgency. But not the incompetence. You mean drowning the envelope? I asked. Yes, Wolfe said. If Cross had wished to protect the evidence, he would have divided it. He did, I said. Loader kept a copy. Unintentionally, Wolfe said. The division that matters occurred later. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Margaret Hale, dressed impeccably again, dry as a bone. Her eyes flicked past me into the office. I need to speak to Mr. Wolfe, she said. You're in luck, I said. He's speaking to evidence. She entered, stopping short when she saw the negatives on the desk. Her breath caught, just once. Wolfe watched her like a chess player observing a premature move. You recovered them, she said. Some of them, Wolfe replied. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Too slightly. I was right, she said. Someone tried to destroy them. Yes, Wolfe said. But not successfully. She clasped her hands. Then we can go to the police. In time, Wolfe said. First, clarity. She stiffened. About what? About you, Wolfe said calmly. I took a seat. This was getting good. You knew, Wolfe continued, that the evidence was photographic before anyone told you. Her mouth opened, then closed. Daniel told me. When? Wolfe asked. The night before he died. At your office, Wolfe said. Yes. And yet, Wolfe said, you arrived here yesterday morning without having gone to the river, without having seen the body, and without knowing what was found, yet you were certain of murder and of evidence. She flushed. Because, Wolfe cut in, you had already seen at least part of the photographs. Silence. I broke it gently. Margaret, this is the part where lying becomes expensive. She exhaled slowly. Daniel showed me one negative. Just one. Wolfe nodded. Which one? She swallowed. The contract. Did you recognize it? Wolfe asked. Yes. Why? Wolfe pressed. Because, she said, voice tight, it was my handwriting on the margin notes. There it was. The room seemed to inhale. I whistled softly. So you weren't just partners. You were involved. Yes, she said. But not in murder. Not yet, I said. She glared at me. Daniel was blackmailing them. Harlan and Brand. He said if they didn't pay, the photos would surface. And you? Wolfe asked. I wanted him to stop, she said. I told him it was dangerous. And when he didn't, Wolfe said, you feared exposure. Yes. But you did not kill him, Wolfe said. No. Wolfe studied her for a long moment. I am inclined to believe you, he said finally. Not because you are innocent, but because you are cautious. She sagged slightly. However, Wolfe continued, your caution failed at one point. She looked up. You knew precisely what had been drowned, Wolfe said. That knowledge will be useful, to us, or to the police. She nodded. I'll cooperate. After she left, the office felt quieter, tenser. Thoughts? I asked. Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled again. The evidence sank too well. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Wolfe said, that the attempt to destroy it was hurried, emotional, and incomplete. Therefore, the killer was under pressure. From Cross, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. And perhaps from time. I looked at the negatives again, faces frozen in incriminating stillness. Next step? I asked. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. We summoned the water fearing. Outside, a taxi hissed through wet pavement. Somewhere, two powerful men were wondering how much of their reflection the river still held. And somewhere else, the truth waited, unimpressed by water, unimpressed by fear, and very much not drowned. Chapter 5, Suspects Who Fear Water. If Nero Wolfe ever decided to stage a dinner party for the purpose of inducing cardiac events, he would do it exactly the way he conducted interrogations, politely, comfortably, and with just enough pressure to make the guilty sweat into their upholstery. By 7 o'clock that evening, the brownstone office had been transformed into a theater of manners. The lamps glowed warmly. The desk was immaculate. The orchids upstairs exhaled their smug approval. Wolfe sat in his red leather chair like a benevolent tyrant, freshly fed and therefore dangerously alert. I handled the invitations. They weren't invitations, exactly, more like suggestions backed by implication. Victor Harlan arrived first. He was built like a warehouse and dressed like a ledger, expensive and tight-lipped. His overcoat smelled faintly of cigars and entitlement. He surveyed the room with practiced disdain, eyes lingering a moment too long on Wolfe's desk, as if expecting something unpleasant to crawl out of it. "Mr. Wolfe," he said. "You wanted to see me." "Indeed," Wolfe replied. "Please sit." Harlan chose the chair farthest from the desk, which struck me as odd. Most men like proximity to power. He liked distance. Next came Councilman Elliot Brand, slim, careful, and smiling the way politicians smile when they've memorized your name and forgotten your face. He shook my hand warmly and nodded to Wolfe with theatrical respect. "Always an honor," Brand said. "Sit," Wolfe said. Brand took the chair nearest the desk without hesitation. That told me something too. Margaret Hale arrived last. She looked composed, almost serene, like someone who decided fear was inefficient. She sat where I gestured, directly opposite Wolfe, hands folded neatly in her lap. 3 suspects. 1 dead man. And a river full of lies. Wolfe waited until everyone was settled. Silence stretched. It was the good kind, the kind that makes people rearrange themselves internally. "Thank you for coming," Wolfe said at last. "We are here to discuss Daniel Cross." Harlan snorted. That man was a leech. Brand raised a hand mildly. "Victor." "No," Wolfe said. "You will not interrupt one another. You will interrupt me." That shut them up. Mr. Cross, Wolfe continued, was in possession of evidence. He was murdered. The attempt to destroy that evidence was clumsy. Brand blinked. "Murdered? The papers say." "The papers," Wolfe said, "are often ill-informed. Mr. Cross was killed before he entered the water." Margaret Hale remained still. Harlan's jaw tightened. Brand's smile flickered, then recovered. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, enjoying the show. Wolfe never rushes, he lets the truth get uncomfortable. The evidence, Wolfe went on, consisted of photographic negatives. Harlan shifted. "Not much. Just enough." Brand tilted his head. "Photographs of what?" Wolfe smiled faintly. "You know." Brand laughed lightly. "That's absurd." "Is it?" Wolfe asked. "Then you will have no objection to my describing them." Harlan's hand clenched on the armrest. Margaret Hale glanced briefly at him, then away. "The images depict," Wolfe said calmly, "a meeting involving Mr. Cross, Mr. Harlan, and a city official, yourself, Councilman Brand. The subject was a shipping contract. The annotations were fraudulent. Brand's face drained of color. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "This is outrageous," Brand said. "You're accusing." "I am observing," Wolfe corrected. "Accusations are vulgar." I pushed off the wall. "Funny thing about those pictures," I said conversationally. "They're hard to drown." Harlan's eyes snapped to me. "Where are they?" There it was. The first real crack. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "Your concern is premature." Harlan stood abruptly. "This is nonsense. I won't be threatened." "Sit down," Wolfe said. Harlan hesitated, then, surprisingly, sat. Wolfe folded his hands. "Let us discuss fear." Brand swallowed. "Fear of what?" "Of exposure," Wolfe said. "Mr. Cross believed he could profit from it. One of you decided otherwise." Margaret Hale spoke then, voice steady. "Daniel intended to blackmail them. I tried to stop him." Harlan rounded on her. "You knew?" "Yes," she said. "And so did you." Brand shook his head. "This is all speculation." "Is it?" Wolfe asked. "Then explain why Mr. Harlan avoids sitting near my desk." All eyes turned to Harlan. "I don't," Harlan said stiffly. "Yet you chose the farthest chair," Wolfe said. "And you have not once looked at the desk surface." Harlan glared. "So what?" "So," Wolfe said, "you fear what may be placed there." I stepped in. "Like wet paper. Or photographs." Brand laughed nervously. "You're reading too much into posture." "Perhaps," Wolfe said. "Then let us read into reaction." He turned slightly. "Archie." I reached into my jacket and placed the torn envelope fragment on the desk, carefully, deliberately. It was a small thing. Damp. Innocent looking. Brand leaned forward, curious. Harlan recoiled. That was the moment. Wolfe didn't miss it. Neither did I. "Interesting," Wolfe said softly. "Mr. Harlan, you recognize this?" Harlan's voice was hoarse. "It's paper." "It is," Wolfe agreed. "From the envelope that once held the negatives." Brand stiffened. "How would you know that?" "Because," Wolfe said, "the person who handled it last would recognize the glue pattern." Margaret Hale looked from one man to the other. "Victor." Harlan stood again. "This is insane." Wolfe remained seated. "Sit." Harlan didn't. "Mr. Harlan," Wolfe said, "you confronted Daniel Cross on the pier. You killed him indoors earlier that night, likely during a dispute over payment. You panicked. You dunked the body into the river with the envelope, believing water would erase your problem." Brand stared at Harlan. "You said you handled it." The words were out before Brand could catch them. Silence fell like a dropped plate. I whistled softly. "Councilman, that sounded rehearsed." Brand's face collapsed. "Victor." Harlan bolted. He didn't make it far. I was closer to the door, and he underestimated my impatience. I caught him by the coat and introduced him to the wall with enough force to make my point but not enough to bruise my knuckles. When he slid to the floor, cursing, the room exhaled. Wolfe looked at Brand. "You will remain seated." Brand did. Wolfe turned to Margaret Hale. "You will testify." She nodded, shaken but resolute. I hauled Harlan back into a chair. He avoided the desk entirely now, eyes darting like a trapped animal. The phone rang. I answered. "Goodwin," I said. "Archie," Kramer's voice came through. "We just got a tip, Harlan's trying to leave town." I smiled down at Harlan. "Too late." Wolfe inclined his head. Inspector Kramer will arrive shortly. Harlan slumped. Brand stared at the floor. Wolfe leaned back, satisfied but not finished. The river was chosen as a stage. But fear betrayed the actor. As sirens approached in the distance, I looked at the suspects, one broken, one exposed, one finally honest. Outside, New York kept breathing. And somewhere beneath its surface, the river let go of another lie. Chapter 6, The Second Drowning Attempt. If there's one occupational hazard Nero Wolfe never puts on the invoice, it's being the most convenient substitute for the evidence. When the truth won't stay sunk, somebody always decides to try again, usually with enthusiasm and poor timing. I left the brownstone a little after 11, which in New York means the city is awake but pretending it isn't. Wolfe had dismissed me with a glance and a word, "Proceed," the way a general releases a scout and expects him to come back with either news or a story worth telling. I had both in mind. What I didn't have was any intention of getting wet. The taxi ride downtown was short and quiet, the driver humming something sad and old while the streets slid by in yellow streaks. I told him to drop me near the river, not at the piers we'd already made famous, but a block up, where the shadows were thicker and the witnesses thinner. I paid, stepped out, and felt the night settle around me like a coat I didn't ask for. The Hudson was black again, oily and patient. A fog had crept in, the lazy kind that pretends to be harmless while it steals your depth perception. I walked along the fence line, hands in my pockets, eyes open. Wolfe had said to bring patience. I brought a little extra caution too. Halfway down the block, I heard footsteps behind me, soft, measured, keeping time with mine. I didn't turn. Turning is for amateurs and mirrors. Instead, I slowed, then stopped abruptly. The footsteps stopped too. "Evening," I said to the water. Nothing answered. I took 2 more steps. The footsteps followed. That's when I turned. The man came out of the fog like it had been waiting for him, dark coat, hat pulled low, face undecided. He didn't bother with conversation. He lunged. I sidestepped, caught his sleeve, and felt the ground tilt as momentum tried to teach me a lesson. He was strong, I'll give him that, and determined in the way only men who've been paid in advance ever are. We grappled, shoes scraping, breath loud in the fog. "Bad night for swimming," I said, because I talk when I'm annoyed. He didn't reply. He shoved. My heel slid. The river loomed. I got an elbow up, caught him under the chin, and felt bone meet bone with a satisfying jolt. He grunted, staggered, then tried again, hands on my coat, driving. We went down together, hard, rolling, my hat skittering away like it wanted no part of this. The edge came up fast. The smell of the river hit me, cold metal and old secrets. I twisted, jammed my knee into his thigh, and rolled clear just as his shoulder dipped toward the water. He scrambled, cursed, then ran, back into the fog, shoes slapping, pride leaking behind him. I lay there for a moment, breathing, staring up at the sky that pretended it didn't see anything. Then I sat up, checked myself for leaks, and laughed once, short and ugly. "Second attempt," I told the river. "You're persistent." Back at the brownstone, Fritz met me with eyes sharp enough to cut bread. "You are late," he said. "I almost took a bath," I said. "Decided against it." He sniffed. "The river is uncivilized." Wolfe was in the office, beer untouched, face carved from calm. He took one look at me and sighed. "You were attacked," he said. "Yes, sir." "You resisted." "Also yes." "Sit," Wolfe said. I did, relaying the episode in economical bursts. Wolfe listened without interruption, his expression unchanged except for the slightest tightening around the eyes when I mentioned the shove. "They attempted to drown you," he said when I finished. "Attempted," I said. "Key word." Wolfe nodded. "It confirms escalation." "From who?" I asked. From someone who believes the evidence remains vulnerable, Wolfe said. Or believes you are. I smiled. Flattered. The phone rang. I answered. Goodwin, I said. Archie, Kramer said. You still alive? Barely, I said. What's new? We found a locker near the old pier, Kramer said. Hidden. Padlocked. Looks fresh. Inside? I asked. Personal effects, Kramer said. Wallet. Keys. Belong to Cross. I closed my eyes. So the killer cleaned him out, then hid the leftovers. And missed something, Kramer added. There's a leather sleeve in there. Sealed. I looked at Wolfe. He raised an eyebrow. Bring it, Wolfe said, loud enough for Kramer to hear. An hour later, the sleeve lay on Wolfe's desk, damp but intact. Inside was a single photographic negative, protected by the leather like a relic. Insurance, I said. Yes, Wolfe agreed. Cross was cautious at the last moment. We examined it under the viewer. The image was sharper than the others, same meeting, same faces, but this time the angle was different. The table. The contract. And a hand, mid-motion, signing. Forgery, I said softly. Indeed, Wolfe said. And motive. The doorbell rang again, New York's way of applauding. Margaret Hale stood there, eyes wide, coat damp this time. She looked shaken. I was followed, she said. Someone tried to scare me. Sit, Wolfe said. You are among professionals. She sat, hands trembling now. The calm was gone. They know, she said. About the negative. Yes, Wolfe said. They do. Who? She asked. Wolfe studied her. Someone who did not kill Daniel Cross. Her head snapped up. Then who did? Wolfe didn't answer. He never does when the answer would be premature. Instead, he turned to me. Archie, he said. What did the river attempt tonight? To erase me, I said. Precisely, Wolfe said. The killer has already acted. The one who attempted to drown you is reacting. Margaret frowned. Reacting to what? To the realization, Wolfe said, that evidence survives ignorance. She looked at the negative, then away. What happens now? Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled, routine reasserting itself like gravity. Now, he said, we prepare. For what? She asked. For repetition, Wolfe said. Criminals repeat their errors when pressured. I stood. And I keep my feet on dry land. For the moment, Wolfe said. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. The orchids upstairs breathed approval, or maybe warning. I looked at the river-smudged truth on the desk, the negative that wouldn't drown, and felt the city tighten around it. Somebody had tried to erase the evidence twice now, once with water, once with me. They wouldn't try a third time the same way. Which meant the next move would be cleverer. And in New York, clever is always dangerous. Chapter 7, Wolfe Drains the River. If there's one sound you learn to recognize living with Nero Wolfe, it's the silence that means he's finished thinking and started deciding. The house takes on a different posture then, like it's bracing itself. The orchids upstairs seem to hold their breath. Fritz lowers his voice. Even the city outside, rattling and coughing as usual, feels as if it's waiting for instructions. Wolfe summoned them for 10 o'clock the next morning. He did it politely, of course, phone calls placed with impeccable courtesy and an undertone that suggested absence would be regretted. I handled the logistics, which mostly meant making sure the chairs were spaced just far enough apart to prevent comfort but close enough to permit perspiration. By 5 minutes to 10, the office was ready. Lamps positioned. Desk cleared except for 3 items, the torn envelope fragment, the leather sleeve, and a single negative in its protective sheath. Wolfe sat in his red leather chair, immovable as a monument, beer within reach but untouched. He hadn't had a drop since breakfast. That alone told me this was going to be educational. They arrived in order of nerves. Councilman Elliot Brand came first, smile polished, eyes tired. He chose the chair nearest the door this time, closer to escape than to power. Victor Harlan followed, heavier now, like gravity had started to collect interest. He avoided looking at anything on the desk. Margaret Hale came last, composed but pale, her calm held together by willpower and expensive tailoring. Inspector Kramer arrived on time, which for him counts as enthusiasm. He leaned against the wall, arms folded, face set in official skepticism. Wolfe waited until everyone was seated. Then he waited another 10 seconds, because he enjoys the effect. "We are here," Wolfe said at last, "to conclude a matter that has been artificially prolonged by water." Brand cleared his throat. "Mr. Wolfe." "No," Wolfe said. "You will listen." That shut him up. Wolfe gestured with one heavy finger toward the desk. Daniel Cross believed evidence could be weaponized. He was correct. He also believed it could be destroyed easily. He was mistaken. Harlan shifted. Brand clasped his hands too tightly. Margaret watched Wolfe steadily, as if he were the only solid object in a room full of fog. "The body," Wolfe continued, "was introduced to the river after death. The evidence was introduced with it. This was not an act of subtlety. It was an act of impatience." I chimed in helpfully. "And ignorance." Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. "Yes." He picked up the leather sleeve, not lifting it fully, just touching it, like a man acknowledging a dangerous animal. This remained behind. A fragment of proof overlooked because the perpetrator believed the problem solved. Brand swallowed. "You keep saying the perpetrator." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Because there was one." Harlan snorted. "You can't prove that." Wolfe looked at him calmly. "Mr. Harlan, you have already proven it, by your fear." Harlan's face darkened. "Fear of being framed." "Fear of water," Wolfe corrected. "Fear of what water fails to erase." I watched Harlan's eyes flick to the negative and then away. He couldn't help it. Like a man avoiding his own reflection. Wolfe turned to Margaret Hale. "You were present at the creation of the fraudulent contract." She nodded. "Yes." "You annotated it," Wolfe said. "You knew it was dangerous." "Yes." "But you did not kill Daniel Cross," Wolfe said. "No," she said firmly. "You did not," Wolfe agreed. "You are cautious. You prefer delay to action." She exhaled slowly, relief cutting through tension like a blade. Wolfe shifted his attention to Brand. "Councilman Brand." Brand straightened. "I've cooperated." "You have evaded," Wolfe said. "But not successfully." Brand's smile trembled. "This is all circumstantial." Wolfe's eyes hardened. "Circumstances are facts that have not yet learned how to speak." He leaned back. "Let us reconstruct." The room seemed to shrink. "Daniel Cross arranged a late meeting," Wolfe said. "He possessed photographic proof of a fraudulent contract implicating a shipping magnate and a city official. He believed he could extract payment. He underestimated one of you." Harlan's hands clenched. Brand's gaze dropped to the carpet. "The murder occurred indoors," Wolfe went on. Quietly. "No witnesses. The body was stored briefly. The river was selected as a stage to suggest accident." Kramer shifted, interested despite himself. "The evidence was enclosed with the body," Wolfe said. "A mistake. The envelope was torn in haste. Pieces remained near the point of introduction. The river betrayed the lie." I added, rivers are bad at secrets. Wolfe nodded. Indeed. He looked directly at Brand now. One of you reacted to the survival of evidence not with strategy, but with repetition. Brand stiffened. What do you mean? I mean, Wolfe said, that the person who attempted to drown Archie Goodwin was not the killer. Everyone looked at me. I gave a small bow. That attempt, Wolfe continued, was a reaction, panic at the realization that destruction had failed. The killer had already acted and had nothing further to gain by risk. Harlan laughed harshly. So you admit you don't know? Wolfe ignored him. Mr. Brand, you attempted to erase the remaining proof. Brand shot to his feet. That's a lie. Wolfe did not raise his voice. You revealed yourself when you spoke of matters only the killer could know. Brand's mouth opened, then closed. You knew, Wolfe said, what the photographs showed before I described them. You knew the river location before it was disclosed. You knew the sequence. Kramer pushed off the wall. That true, Brand? Brand's face collapsed, the politician's mask finally giving up. Victor said he handled it. Harlan spun. You promised. Sit, Wolfe said, and Harlan did, like a man remembering gravity. Wolfe leaned forward now, fingers steepled, voice calm and absolute. Mr. Harlan, your crime was greed. Mr. Brand, yours was fear. One of these killed Daniel Cross. Brand shook his head wildly. I didn't touch him. No, Wolfe said. You did not. Brand froze. Wolfe's gaze shifted, slowly, deliberately, to Harlan. Harlan's breathing grew shallow. You're guessing. I am concluding, Wolfe said. Harlan surged to his feet. This is insane. Kramer stepped forward. Sit down, Harlan. Harlan didn't. He backed toward the door. I moved first. I always do. He didn't get far. When the dust settled and Harlan was restrained, verbally and physically, Wolfe addressed the room one last time. The river was chosen because it promises erasure, he said. But water only hides. It does not destroy. He looked at Margaret Hale. Truth behaves similarly. She nodded, eyes wet but steady. Kramer cleared his throat. You ready to make this official? Wolfe leaned back into his chair, routine restored at last. Almost. He lifted his glass of beer and took a sip, the first of the day. Now, he said, we allow what floats to return. Outside, a taxi horn blared. Somewhere downtown, the Hudson kept moving, indifferent again, but its work was done. Chapter 8, What Floats Always Returns. There's a peculiar calm that settles over a house after Nero Wolfe finishes a case. It isn't relief exactly, relief is noisy. This calm is tidy, deliberate, and faintly judgmental. The brownstone exhales. The orchids upstairs resume their smug breathing. Fritz moves about the kitchen like a man whose universe has returned to its proper orbit. Justice, for Wolfe, is not dramatic. It is accurate. By the time Inspector Kramer finished the paperwork and escorted Victor Harlan out in a condition best described as deflated, the office had taken on the look of a room that had hosted something unpleasant and survived it. Councilman Brand followed soon after, pale and silent, escorted by two uniforms who looked like they'd enjoy explaining the situation to their superiors. Margaret Hale remained behind, seated where Wolfe had left her, hands folded, eyes fixed on the desk. The desk was clear now. The torn envelope fragment, the leather sleeve, the negative, gone. Evidence, once it has done its duty, is no longer welcome in Wolfe's sight. Kramer lingered by the door. You know, he said, every time I think I've got you figured out. You are mistaken, Wolfe said mildly. Kramer grunted. We'll be in touch. Regrettably, Wolfe replied. When the door closed, silence took its place like a cat settling into a chair it considers rightful property. Margaret Hale stood. "It's over," she said. It sounded like a question. "For you," Wolfe said, "it has begun." She flinched. "You will testify," Wolfe continued. "You will explain your participation. You will be judged accordingly." She nodded. "I understand." "Good," Wolfe said. "Understanding is preferable to innocence. Innocence is often imaginary." She managed a small smile. "Thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For not drowning me," she said. I smiled back. "We're selective." After she left, the house grew quieter still. Fritz appeared with coffee, which he placed before me with the solemnity of a man administering last rites. "Mr. Archie," he said, "you are fortunate." "Why's that?" I asked. "You were almost drowned," Fritz said. "That would have been inconvenient." "High praise," I said. Wolfe took his coffee without comment, then settled deeper into his chair, the way he does when he intends to enjoy the aftermath. His eyes closed briefly, not in fatigue, but in satisfaction. "So," I said, leaning back, "care to walk me through it?" "For my memoirs." Wolfe opened one eye. "Your memoirs will be libelous." "Only the good parts," I said. Wolfe sighed, but it was a contented sound. "Very well." The essential error was impatience. "Harlan's," I said. "Indeed," Wolfe replied. Harlan was accustomed to force, commercial, not physical. When Cross threatened exposure, Harlan chose elimination. He killed him indoors during a dispute, then sought an expedient disposal. "The river," I said. "Yes," Wolfe said. "An old superstition. That water cleanses." "It doesn't," I said. "It just moves things around." "Precisely," Wolfe said. Harlan introduced both body and evidence to the water, believing both would vanish. He did not understand the nature of photographic film. Nor did he anticipate that Cross, in a moment of belated prudence, had divided the evidence. "And Brand?" I asked. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Brand was a coward. A dangerous one. He believed Harlan had resolved the matter. When it became apparent that proof survived, he attempted repetition, clumsily. "Me," I said. "Yes," Wolfe said. "You were a substitute target. Easier than confronting the truth." I stretched. "I don't like being a substitute." "Nor should you," Wolfe said. Outside, a taxi hissed past on wet pavement. New York was already busy forgetting the case, which is one of its more admirable traits. "What about Margaret?" I asked. "She was complicit," Wolfe said. "But not homicidal. Her mistake was knowledge without action. She enabled Cross's scheme, then attempted to mitigate it too late." "Caution," I said. "Yes," Wolfe agreed. "Caution delays disaster. It does not prevent it." I sipped my coffee and watched Wolfe settle fully back into routine. He adjusted the paperweight on his desk. He straightened a pencil. Order restored. "So that's it," I said. "River drained." Wolfe shook his head. "No river is ever drained. It merely relinquishes what it cannot keep." I thought about the Hudson, black, patient, pretending indifference while it carried pieces of the city along its back. About how Cross had believed he could use it to erase his mistakes, and how Harlan had believed the same. They were both wrong. "Funny thing," I said. "Truth floats." "Eventually," Wolfe said. "Gravity is not the only force." He reached for his beer at last and took a measured sip. That was the final signal. Case closed. I stood and stretched, feeling the pleasant ache of a job finished without requiring a change of clothes. "What now?" "Now," Wolfe said, "you will type my invoice." "Gladly," I said. "Hazard pay included?" "You were not drowned," Wolfe said. Be grateful. I grinned. I am. Upstairs, the orchids breathed in approval. Fritz began humming something cheerful. The brownstone settled into its familiar rhythm. Outside, New York kept moving. Taxis, shadows, late-night calls, the endless shuffle of lives intersecting and separating again. Somewhere beneath it all, the river flowed on, carrying with it whatever it was given, but never quite erasing what mattered. Because in this city, like in Wolfe's office, what floats always returns. And Nero Wolfe, immovable as ever, was already waiting for the next thing that refused to stay sunk.